They were the kings of the silver screen, charming, dashing, and impossibly handsome. In an era when Hollywood was at its most glamorous, these men didn't just act, they captivated. From brooding rebels to polished gentlemen, they defined masculinity for generations and left audiences breathless with every smoldering glance. But what happened after the spotlight faded? In this video, we're taking a nostalgic journey through time to rediscover the top 10 most handsome leading men of Hollywood's golden age, then and now. Some aged like fine wine. Others vanished from the limelight. But all of them left behind a legacy of unforgettable beauty and undeniable star power. Let's dive in. Gregory Peck. Gregory Peck. When Gregory Peck first graced the silver screen in the 1940s, audiences were instantly drawn to his towering 6 feet 3 inches presence, deep commanding voice, and a quiet moral authority that seemed to radiate from within. With unforgettable roles in To Kill a Mockingbird, Roman Holiday, and Gentleman's Agreement, Peck quickly became more than just a movie star. He became Hollywood's conscience, the personification of honor, strength, and dignity. What set Peck apart from his golden age peers wasn't just his talent, but his unwavering consistency, on and off the screen. While many stars needed careful studio grooming to maintain their image, Peck required none. Greg didn't need polishing, recalled longtime studio publicist Alan Winston. He walked into a room and simply was the man everyone imagined him to be. His public image wasn't manufactured, it was a natural extension of who he truly was. Even physically, Peck defied Hollywood norms. While others leaned on cosmetic tweaks to maintain their allure, Peck's classic good looks remained largely untouched. His only nod to showbiz vanity? A bit of dental work in the early 40s to perfect the smile that would become one of his trademarks. As he aged, Peck did so with the same quiet nobility that defined his career. By the 1980s and 90s, his dark hair had faded to a distinguished silver, and time had gently etched lines into his iconic face, but the essence of Gregory Peck remained untouched. When he passed away in 2003 at the age of 87, the world didn't just lose a legendary actor, it lost one of the last true gentlemen of Hollywood's golden age. A man whose real-life character so closely mirrored the noble roles he played, it was hard to tell where the actor ended and the hero began. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn. The phrase, "in like Flynn," didn't just slip into American slang by accident. It was born from the larger-than-life persona of Errol Flynn himself. With chiseled good looks, a devil-may-care charm, and athletic grace, Flynn became the face of Hollywood adventure in the 1930s and 40s. In swashbuckling classics like Captain Blood, The Adventures of Robin Hood, and The Seahawk, he didn't just play the hero. He defined what a hero looked and moved like for an entire generation. But behind that effortless charisma was a carefully engineered illusion. When Warner Brothers first discovered the unknown Australian, he was far from the polished heartthrob we now remember. Studio archives reveal that in 1935, just before his big break, Flynn underwent extensive dental work, repairing and reshaping teeth to create the radiant smile that would later melt hearts on screen. And though he had a natural athleticism, the dashing swordsman image didn't come from luck alone. Flynn trained relentlessly in fencing, stage combat, and physical conditioning. His iconic shirtless scenes? They were the result of grueling workouts, expert lighting, and meticulous planning, techniques still used by today's action stars. He understood the business of being Errol Flynn, recalled director Michael Curtiz. He knew the image was everything, and he worked harder to maintain it than most people ever realized. But even the most powerful illusion can't defy time forever. By the late 1940s, Flynn's off-screen indulgences, especially his heavy drinking, began to erode the facade. His once sculpted body softened, and the boyish charm gave way to a bloated, weary face. Fans were stunned when they saw him in person, no longer filtered through studio-controlled glamour. When Flynn died in 1959 at just 50 years old, the difference between the vibrant hero on screen and the man he'd become was painfully clear. Film historian Richard Schickel once wrote, "Flynn's transformation from golden boy to physical wreck happened with tragic speed. Yet in our cultural memory, he remains forever young, forever dashing, a reminder of cinema's power to freeze time and preserve beauty, even as it slips away in real life." Though his real-life story ended in tragedy, Errol Flynn's legend lives on. His youthful image, etched in celluloid during Hollywood's golden age, continues to define the very essence of the swashbuckling screen idol. Rock Hudson. Rock Hudson, the man Hollywood built. With his towering 6 feet 5 inches frame, chiseled jawline, and captivating smile, Rock Hudson seemed like the very definition of 1950s masculinity. But behind that flawless facade was a man carefully molded by Hollywood's ruthless machinery. Born Roy Harold Scherer Jr., Hudson didn't simply rise to fame, he was engineered for it. When talent agent Henry Wilson discovered him working as a truck driver, he saw raw potential, but also glaring imperfections. To become a star, Roy needed more than a new name, he needed a complete transformation. Studio records reveal a brutal makeover. Voice coaches worked tirelessly to lower his naturally high-pitched tone, dentists reconstructed his teeth for that camera-ready smile, and surgeons reshaped his ears to ensure they wouldn't ruin a profile shot. Even his name, Rock, was chosen to evoke strength and stoic American masculinity, while Hudson echoed the grandeur of U.S. geography. As publicist Mark Miller later admitted, this wasn't about polishing a few rough edges, it was about creating a product from scratch. The illusion didn't stop with appearance. Universal Studios meticulously built Hudson's public persona as the ultimate heartthrob, an all-American ladies' man. Behind the scenes, though, they orchestrated sham relationships and a fake marriage to conceal the truth. Rock Hudson was gay. The pressure to live this lie was immense. Every smile, every red carpet kiss, every flirtation with a starlet, choreographed for the cameras, while his real identity remained locked behind the studio gates. As Hudson aged through the 1960s, keeping up the illusion became exhausting. Makeup artist Bob Schiffer recalled using every trick in the book: filters, flattering lighting, camera angles, and layers of makeup to preserve the youthful mask. By the 1970s, Hudson shifted into more character-driven roles, including a successful turn in the TV series Macmillan and Wife. His once black hair turned silver, and the Hollywood gloss gave way to a more genuine version of the man beneath the myth. But the most heartbreaking chapter came in 1985, when a frail Hudson appeared beside Doris Day at a press event. Fans were stunned. Weeks later, he became the first major celebrity to die of AIDS-related complications. He was only 59. His death didn't just shatter the carefully constructed image, it exposed the staggering lengths Hollywood went to in order to suppress the truth. Even now, Rock Hudson's films stand as shimmering relics of a carefully curated ideal, one that shaped how generations defined masculinity. Yet behind the cinematic perfection was a man forced to live a double life, his true self hidden for the sake of a dream that was never really his. Robert Mitchum. Robert Mitchum, the man who aged like a legend. In an era when Hollywood stars were sculpted to perfection, Robert Mitchum defied the mold. With his half-lidded eyes, gravelly voice, and a face carved by life itself, Mitchum didn't just act the part of the film noir antihero, he was it. He exuded a kind of effortless danger, a sleepy-eyed cool that felt more real than anything the studios could script. But behind that signature rugged charm was a quiet, calculated approach to how he looked, a balancing act between authenticity and subtle refinement. When Mitchum arrived in Hollywood in the early 1940s, studio executives at RKO weren't convinced. His features were raw, shaped by years as a boxer and laborer. His nose, broken more than once, was a particular concern. At first, Mitchum refused to touch it. That resistance only added to his rebellious mystique. But after the success of Out of the Past in 1947 catapulted him to stardom, he agreed to a minimal rhinoplasty, not to perfect his looks, but to preserve the edge that set him apart. The surgery refined the bridge without erasing the character etched into his face. That was Mitchum's genius. He didn't want to look polished, he wanted to look real. He knew his sleepy eyes, once dismissed as a casting liability, were part of his allure. When a studio executive pushed him to get an eyelid lift in the 1950s, Mitchum famously snapped, "The eyes stay as they are. They're what get me the interesting parts." As he aged into the 1960s and beyond, Mitchum made no effort to freeze time. Instead, he chose targeted maintenance procedures, primarily around his jawline, to keep his signature look intact. "Bob never wanted to look touched up," said his longtime physician, Dr. Ronald Curran. "It was just enough to keep that steel-jawed look the audience loved, never anything to make him look younger than he was." While other stars desperately chased youth, Mitchum leaned into his years. He took on roles that fit his natural aging, gritty, mature, world-weary men whose faces told their own stories. In The Yakuza, 1974, and Farewell, My Lovely, 1975, Mitchum's face bore the creases of time and truth. His hair grayed, his skin weathered, but the toughness and the soul remained. And that was the magic. He aged on his terms. He preserved what mattered, let the rest go, and in doing so, crafted a kind of rugged elegance few stars ever achieve. When Robert Mitchum passed away in 1997 at the age of 79, his face still held the weight, the wear, and the wonder of a man who never faked a thing. As Roger Ebert once wrote after interviewing him, he's one of the rare stars who aged into exactly who he always seemed to be. There's no illusion, just Mitchum. And maybe that, more than anything, is why he'll never be forgotten. Paul Newman. Paul Newman, the leading man who aged with grace and grit. With those piercing blue eyes, a sculpted physique, and a quiet charisma that radiated from the screen, Paul Newman redefined what it meant to be a leading man in the 1950s. He was masculine yet emotionally intelligent, effortlessly handsome but grounded in something deeper. Unlike many polished stars of the studio era, Newman's allure seemed to come from his authenticity. Raw, real, and remarkably human. But even that authenticity, to some extent, was carefully shaped. Early in his career, Hollywood saw potential, but also imperfections. A slightly crooked nose from a sports injury. Ears that protruded just a bit too much for the camera's liking. Behind the scenes, makeup artist Dick Smith, who worked with Newman on The Hustler, later admitted, "Paul had a natural photogenic quality, but we made subtle tweaks. We'd tape his ears back for close-ups and use makeup to balance out the symmetry of his face." The camera can be unforgiving. Unlike many stars who chased youth through increasingly drastic measures, Newman stopped there. He let the rest of his story show. Instead of hiding from aging, he embraced it. His commitment shifted to rigorous fitness and a disciplined lifestyle, no surgical shortcuts. As he moved into his 50s and 60s, the lines on his face became tools, not flaws. They added weight to roles in The Verdict, 1982, and Nobody's Fool, 1994, revealing a man who didn't just act with emotion, but wore it. And those eyes, those famous, ocean blue eyes, never dimmed. Paired with silver hair and time-carved features, Newman's screen presence only grew more compelling. Director Sidney Pollack once said, "Paul had a rare kind of confidence. He knew that aging naturally gave him access to richer roles. He didn't try to cling to the face he had at 30. That wisdom paid off." While many of his contemporaries faded or clung to fading youth, Newman's career thrived deep into his 70s. His final film role in Road to Perdition, 2002, at age 77, wasn't just a performance, it was a masterclass in aging with dignity, power, and presence. His lived-in face became a canvas of experience, drawing audiences in with every wrinkle, every shadow, every glance. When Paul Newman passed away in 2008 at the age of 83, the world mourned not just a star, but a man who had shown us something rare in Hollywood, the beauty of aging out loud. As critic Leonard Maltin so perfectly put it, Newman gave us a gift, a leading man who let us watch him age honestly, decade after decade, role after role. In a town built on illusion, Paul Newman proved that truth, in all its aging, imperfect glory, could be even more powerful than eternal youth. Gene Kelly. Gene Kelly was more than just a star. He was a force of nature. With his athletic grace, radiant smile, and boundless energy, Kelly didn't just dance. He redefined what it meant to be a man on screen. He brought power and poetry together in a way that transformed the Hollywood musical and set a new standard of masculinity, one that fused strength with artistry. But behind the effortless charm and dazzling performances was a man who worked relentlessly to craft and protect that image. When Kelly arrived in Hollywood in 1941 after conquering Broadway, MGM executives quickly spotted what they saw as physical flaws that had to be fixed before he could become a leading man. Studio dental records reveal that Kelly underwent significant cosmetic work, teeth capped and reshaped to give him that unforgettable megawatt grin. But the real challenge was his hair. Even in his late 20s, Kelly's receding hairline concerned the studio. Their solution? Impeccably made hairpieces, hand-sewn with real human hair, so natural they were virtually undetectable, even in close-ups during high-energy dance scenes. His longtime makeup artist, William Tuttle, once said, "Gene's hairpieces were masterpieces, the finest money could buy. They had to be. One slip during those intense routines and the illusion would have shattered." Each film required multiple identical pieces, meticulously cleaned and restyled between takes due to sweat and movement. Yet it wasn't just about hair or teeth. Kelly's entire image, his youthful, vibrant, athletic presence, was the result of tireless discipline. Long before it became common in Hollywood, he stuck to a strict workout and diet regimen to stay in peak form. As he moved into his 50s and 60s, the effort to preserve that iconic image only grew. For TV appearances in the 70s, Kelly relied on even more advanced hairpieces, careful lighting, and evolving makeup techniques to mask the inevitable signs of aging. By the 1980s, though he had largely stepped away from dancing, Kelly never stopped curating his image. He rarely made a public appearance without careful preparation, understanding that his legacy, his brand, depended on the lasting memory of the energetic man in motion. As film historian Janine Basinger once put it, what made Kelly's image so hard to maintain wasn't just about staying handsome, it was about preserving the illusion of vitality, of unstoppable physical dynamism. That's far harder to fake with age. When Gene Kelly passed away in 1996 at 83, he had long since faded from the public eye. But that, too, was by design. He stepped back before the illusion could fade, preserving the version of himself we all still remember. The joyful dancer splashing through puddles and singing in the rain, or gliding across Parisian streets with effortless charisma. As choreographer and protege Kenny Ortega noted, Gene knew exactly what his legacy was. He made sure the world would always remember him in motion, forever young, forever magical. James Dean. James Dean, the beautiful illusion of rebellion. Brace yourself, this one will hurt. James Dean became a legend with just 3 films and a life that ended too soon, dying at 24 and sealing his place as the eternal symbol of youthful rebellion. But what many don't realize is that Dean's iconic image, the tousled hair, the torn jeans, the aching vulnerability, wasn't just natural charisma. It was artfully engineered. When Dean arrived in Hollywood in the early 1950s, he was just another struggling actor. Attractive, yes, but not unforgettable. It wasn't until director Elia Kazan cast him in East of Eden, 1955, that the transformation began, not just in performance, but in persona. Behind the scenes, Warner Brothers had their doubts. Dean's acne-prone skin, his slightly crooked teeth, they didn't scream, leading man. So the studio stepped in. His smile was fixed, his skin perfected with custom makeup, yet never so much that he lost that raw, real edge that made audiences lean in. His iconic look in Rebel Without a Cause? Nothing about it was accidental. Costume designer Moss Mabry admitted they tested dozens of t-shirts to find just the right fit, cut, and texture. His jeans were custom-fitted and aged until they looked like he'd lived in them for years. Even that effortlessly messy hair? Hours of precise styling went into making it look that casual. James Dean didn't just play the rebel. He was the rebel, by design. What made Dean revolutionary was that his image rejected Hollywood polish, even though it was the product of Hollywood polish. Film historian David Thompson put it best. Dean's true genius was making the meticulously staged feel raw, wild, and utterly real. Then came the crash. On a lonely highway in September 1955, before Rebel Without a Cause even hit theaters and Giant was complete, James Dean was gone. Just like that, the rising star became a frozen myth. He never had the chance to grow older, evolve, or defy the image crafted for him. He remained, forever, 24. In the years that followed, studios and photographers quietly edited the legend. Damaged negatives were restored, flawed images buried, and the myth of the beautiful, misunderstood rebel was polished into perfection. What we're left with is a heartbreakingly curated version of a man who never got the chance to show us who he truly was. Unlike others on this list who aged, stumbled, reinvented themselves, Dean didn't get a later. His story has no second act, no third. Just a beginning, then silence. Would he have kept that fire as he aged? Would he have grown into an even deeper artist, or battled against fading youth? We'll never know. And maybe that's why the ache around his memory still lingers. James Dean wasn't just lost. He was paused, at the very peak of his crafted rebellion. A haunting masterpiece of what could have been. Forever young. Forever unfinished. Clark Gable. Clark Gable, the king Hollywood built. Clark Gable was known as the undisputed king of Hollywood, with smoldering looks, effortless charm, and a screen presence that made him MGM's crown jewel for nearly 3 decades. But behind that dazzling smile and iconic stare was a man carefully sculpted by the very studio system that made him a star. The Clark Gable we saw in Gone with the Wind and It Happened One Night wasn't just born, he was built. When Gable arrived in Hollywood in the late 1920s, studio executives saw potential, but also plenty of problems. His ears stuck out awkwardly, his teeth were in terrible shape due to years of neglect and infection, and his rugged features were deemed too rough for a romantic lead. MGM, determined to mold him into their next golden boy, took drastic measures. In 1932, Gable underwent a brutal ear surgery, long before modern cosmetic techniques. Without general anesthesia, only numbing agents and alcohol dulled the pain as surgeons sliced behind his ears and stitched them closer to his head. It was crude, painful, and effective. His smile, however, required an even more extreme makeover. Early photos show crooked, damaged teeth that MGM deemed unacceptable. The solution? Remove most of them. Gable was fitted with full dentures, forever altering his face and his future. His wife, actress Carole Lombard, once joked about his transformation by gifting him a heart-shaped box filled with his spare dentures, along with a note that read, "Keep these with you. I want to make sure that smile stays in our family." The makeover was a resounding success. Gable's new appearance, refined, masculine, and camera-ready, became the blueprint for how studios would engineer male stars for generations to come. Yet, as he aged, maintaining the illusion grew harder. By the time he filmed Gone with the Wind at age 38, he was already wearing hairpieces and relying on heavy makeup to preserve that jawline and rugged appeal. The man on the screen was increasingly a product of artistry and maintenance. What makes Gable's case so extraordinary is how completely Hollywood concealed the truth. The world believed his magnetism was natural. But by the early 1960s, the gap between reality and image had grown too wide. On the set of The Misfits in 1961, makeup artists reportedly spent hours each day recreating the Gable audiences expected. When he died shortly after filming at age 59 from a heart attack, fans were stunned by how fragile and worn he appeared in real life. Clark Gable wasn't just a movie star, he was a masterclass in Hollywood illusion. His transformation remains one of the most shocking and hidden in entertainment history. Because while he brought stories to life on screen, Gable himself was one of the greatest stories Hollywood ever told. Carrie Grant. Carrie Grant. The art of staying timeless. Everyone wants to be Carrie Grant. Even I want to be Carrie Grant. That iconic line, spoken by the man himself, hinted at a deeper truth. Carrie Grant was not just a person, but a carefully crafted persona. Behind the polished charm, the impeccable suits, and the ageless grace was a man who understood the power of image, and who quietly, methodically, maintained it. Born Archibald Leach, Grant's transformation into Hollywood royalty began in the early 1930s. One of his first steps was perfecting the dazzling smile that would become his signature. Studio records from Paramount reveal that in 1932, Grant underwent extensive dental work, replacing damaged teeth and reshaping others to create the flawless, symmetrical grin fans would come to adore. But the refinement didn't stop there. By the 1950s, Grant was in his 50s, yet still cast as the leading man opposite actresses half his age. To maintain that youthful allure, he reportedly underwent a discreet upper eyelid lift around 1957, a procedure known as blepharoplasty, to remove the sagging skin that could make him appear tired on camera. Director Alfred Hitchcock, who worked closely with Grant, subtly confirmed this change in a 1966 interview, noting the noticeable refresh in Grant's appearance between To Catch a Thief, 1955, and North by Northwest, 1959, before quickly changing the subject. What made Grant's enhancements so remarkable was how subtle they were. Unlike others in his era who chose dramatic facelifts, Grant opted for precision. His expressions remained authentic. His charm, untouched. So seamless was the work that audiences chalked up his agelessness to good genes, a clean lifestyle, or maybe just Hollywood magic. Katharine Hepburn, his longtime friend and co-star, alluded to his discipline in her memoir. Carrie treated his appearance like a fine car or a luxury watch. He knew when it needed maintenance, and he never let it run down. Long before it was trendy, Grant embraced skincare and fitness as daily rituals. He did facial exercises, followed a strict diet, used specialized products, and stayed active, maintaining not just his looks but his vitality well into his 60s. Then, at 62, he did something few stars have the courage to do. He walked away. After filming Walk, Don't Run in 1966, Grant retired while still playing romantic leads, choosing to preserve the image the world adored rather than risk tarnishing it. He vanished from the spotlight on his own terms, ensuring that fans would always remember him as the debonair, impossibly handsome man they fell in love with. When he passed in 1986 at age 82, many were stunned by how different he looked. After all, they hadn't seen him on screen in 2 decades. But to them, Carrie Grant hadn't aged. He had been frozen in time. Plastic surgeon Dr. Jessica Wu, who analyzed Grant's evolution through archival footage, said it best: he never tried to look 30 at 50. He just wanted to look like the best version of himself at every stage. That's not vanity, that's artistry. Grant's quiet dedication to subtle enhancement didn't just preserve a legacy, it redefined one. And in doing so, he set the gold standard for how Hollywood's leading men age with grace, dignity, and just a little well-placed help. Humphrey Bogart. Humphrey Bogart, the carefully crafted anti-hero. With his gravelly voice, brooding stare, and hard-edged demeanor, Humphrey Bogart seemed like the last person in Hollywood to need image crafting. Yet behind the tough guy persona that defined a generation, Bogart's rise to icon status was anything but accidental. His transformation from an unassuming actor into the silver screen's ultimate anti-hero was a masterclass in cinematic illusion, where every imperfection was turned into power. When Bogart first stepped into Hollywood in the early 1930s, Warner Brothers saw potential, but also a few challenges. One of the most notable was his speech, shaped by a Navy injury during World War I that left his upper lip partially paralyzed. The result was a slight lisp and limited facial movement. Instead of concealing it, the studio made a bold choice. They leaned in. Makeup artists and lighting crews didn't hide his scars, they highlighted them. His tight, clenched expressions became part of his mystique, the controlled cool of a man who said little but meant everything. Legendary makeup artist Perk Westmore once said, "With Bogey, we didn't cover the flaws, we built a legend around them." They deepened the shadows around his lip, sculpted his stubble to look just the right amount of rugged, and gave him clothes that looked lived in rather than pressed and perfect. While other leading men were polished to shine, Bogart was engineered to look raw, real, and untouchable. Film historian Robert Clark captured it best: Bogart's magic was the illusion of no illusion. He seemed authentic, unscripted, but in truth, every frame was carefully composed to sell that very idea. As Bogart aged into his 40s and 50s, the maintenance of this effortless masculinity only grew more complex. His receding hairline was managed with clever styling and the occasional hairpiece, while makeup techniques kept his jawline sharp and his presence commanding. In The African Queen, 1951, director John Huston stripped him of makeup altogether, letting the audience see the weathered, worn man beneath the polish. It was shocking, proof of just how much effort went into making Bogart look effortlessly real. By the time he shot his final films in the mid-1950s, esophageal cancer had already begun to ravage his body. He was thinner, weaker, and visibly tired. Yet behind the scenes, makeup teams worked tirelessly to restore the classic Bogart look, redefining shadows, reinforcing bone structure, and covering the toll illness had taken. Even in his final days, the man who defined authenticity on screen remained a work of art behind the camera. When Humphrey Bogart passed away in 1957 at the age of 57, the contrast between the man he truly was and the legendary figure he portrayed on screen had become striking. Yet unlike many stars whose legacies dim as the smoke and mirrors of Hollywood fade, Bogart's reputation has only grown brighter with time. That lasting appeal lies in the brilliance of how his image was built. Rather than concealing his rough edges, Hollywood leaned into them, crafting a persona that felt raw, real, and unmistakably him, even if that authenticity was meticulously staged. As film critic Roger Ebert once noted, Bogart wasn't traditionally handsome, but he was cinematically handsome. His face, lined with grit and character, photographed in a way that was far more compelling than conventional good looks. In an industry obsessed with illusion, Bogart's most powerful trick was convincing audiences he had none. That crafted realness became the blueprint for masculine identity on screen, and still shapes our idea of the leading man decades after his death. As we look back on Hollywood's most iconic men, from Gable and Grant to Newman and Dean, we uncover a fascinating shift. The early studio era enhanced natural features to create polished, idealized versions of masculinity. But by the mid-century, the magic trick had changed. Studios now aimed to manufacture authenticity, to make something artificial feel effortless and real. Even more striking is how differently we treat these changes when it comes to gender. The slightest change to Marilyn Monroe or Elizabeth Taylor's appearance has been analyzed to death, scrutinized, and judged. Yet their male peers were largely spared the same microscope. That double standard continues to this day. Modern leading men undergo procedures far more complex than anything from the Golden Age, but they still sell us the story of clean eating, good genes, and gym routines. Through it all, one thing hasn't changed: our tangled relationship with male beauty and authenticity. We expect our heroes to look perfect, but never admit they've done anything to achieve it. We want flawless, ageless faces that seem untouched, forcing today's stars into the same silent performance that began nearly a century ago. The 10 men in this video didn't just set the standard for Hollywood masculinity. They wrote the playbook for how male celebrities manage aging, image, and illusion. Which transformation surprised you the most? Did it change the way you see any of these icons? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear them. And if this deep dive into Hollywood's secret history fascinated you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. There's so much more behind the silver screen, and we're just getting started.